started like any ordinary day. I was lounging in our warm little living room, absently scrolling through my phone, when I heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. It was late, well past midnight, but I instantly knew it had to be her. My wife, Natalie, had been away on a business trip for the past 3 days. The trip itself wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Her role often involved traveling. What stood out this time, however, was the strangely cheerful tone in her messages during the trip. The door swung open, and there she was, framed in the doorway with a suitcase in one hand and her phone in the other. Her face was glowing with a joy I hadn't seen in ages. She was giggling at something, probably a joke or a text. For a fleeting moment, I convinced myself she'd just had an amazing few days. Maybe a big win at work or exciting news from her boss. I nearly smiled, relieved to see her so upbeat. "Hey, babe," she chirped, her voice filled with energy. She kicked off her shoes and set her bag near the entrance. "You won't believe how insane this trip was. The meetings were nonstop, but we nailed our pitch. This could be massive for the firm." I nodded, offering her a faint smile. "That's great, Natalie. Sounds like it was a success." "It really was," she replied, still grinning while her fingers danced over her phone screen. "Oh, and the food at the place they took us to? Insane. Like Michelin-level insane." I watched her as she chatted on, noticing something glowing in her expression. There was a new kind of energy about her, a sort I hadn't seen in a long time. And then there was that laugh. She kept chuckling softly at her phone, a carefree sound that didn't feel familiar anymore. For a brief second, I felt a twinge of envy. Not because she was joyful, but because I hadn't been the one to bring that spark to her. I got up and walked toward her, wrapping her in a loose hug. "You seem really happy," I said with a half-laugh. "Maybe I should send you on more business trips." She laughed too, but it sounded strained this time. "Yeah, maybe," she said, gently pulling away to grab her suitcase. "I'm just gonna unpack real quick." As she headed toward our bedroom, something didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was the way she avoided my gaze, or how tightly she gripped her phone like it held something fragile and forbidden. Whatever it was, I couldn't shake the sense that her giddy mood wasn't just about work. When she vanished into the bedroom, I stayed behind, staring at the empty space where she had stood. That's when I noticed something odd. Her laughter had stopped. In fact, the whole house had fallen into a strange, heavy silence. Curiosity tugged at me, and I crept toward the bedroom, my steps quiet on the soft carpet. As I reached the doorway, I heard her muttering. "No, no, no," she whispered urgently, panic threading her voice. "This can't be happening. Not now." I peeked inside and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her suitcase wide open. She held something in her hands, a folded piece of paper, and all the color had drained from her face. Her smile was gone, replaced by an expression of pure dread. Her hands trembled as she stared down at whatever she had found. "What's wrong?" I asked, stepping further into the room. She jolted at the sound of my voice, quickly stuffing the paper back into her suitcase. "Nothing," she said, forcing out a shaky laugh that didn't match her terrified eyes. "Just work stuff." I raised an eyebrow. "Work stuff? You look like you saw a ghost." She shook her head and snapped the suitcase shut. "I'm fine," she muttered, brushing past me. "Just exhausted. I'll explain tomorrow. Okay?" Before I could get another word in, she had already left the room and shut the bathroom door behind her. The slam echoed, leaving me frozen in place, confused, suspicious, and deeply unsettled. Something was definitely wrong. My instincts screamed that she was hiding something big, and I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep until I figured out what it was. So I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I waited until she was in the shower, and then I opened her suitcase. What I found inside made my blood run cold. I froze for a second, staring at the suitcase like it was Pandora's box. My heart thudded wildly, and my palms were slick with sweat, but I couldn't pull away. I had to know. What was Natalie so determined to keep from me? With slow, deliberate movements, I unzipped the suitcase and lifted the lid. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Just clothes, toiletries, and a few folded documents. But as I rummaged deeper, something caught my attention and sent a chill through me. Tucked beneath her outfits was a small, meticulously wrapped gift box, tied with a crimson ribbon. It wasn't addressed to me. In fact, there was no name on it at all, but its size, the intimacy of its shape, instantly unsettled me. With trembling fingers, I opened it carefully. Inside lay a sleek, black lingerie set, bolder and more revealing than anything she'd ever worn for me. My thoughts spun wildly. Why would she bring this on a work trip? Why hadn't I ever seen it before? Then I noticed a tiny card hidden between the folds of the delicate fabric. My stomach dropped as I read the message written in her familiar handwriting. For when we're finally alone. My chest constricted as nausea swelled inside me. There was no more room for doubt. This wasn't some innocent mistake. It was real. This was evidence. Undeniable proof that Natalie had lied to me. I slumped onto the edge of the bed, the card clenched tightly in my hand, while a storm of questions flooded my mind. Who was we? Someone from work? Someone she'd met during this trip? I wanted the truth, but I knew better than to confront her without more. If I questioned her now, she'd just lie, cover it up, gaslight me. I had to outsmart her. Carefully, I returned everything to its exact place, zipped up the suitcase, and set it where it had been. Then I grabbed my phone, opened the browser, and started searching. My hands shook so much I could barely type, but I eventually managed to log into our shared phone account. What I discovered only twisted the knife deeper. Her call history was packed with unfamiliar numbers, many of them with long durations. One number in particular showed up every single day of her trip, sometimes more than once a day. My pulse hammered as I copied it into a reverse number lookup tool. The result popped up almost instantly. It belonged to someone named Marcus Hale. The name meant nothing to me, but the context, that said everything. Whoever Marcus was, he hadn't just been part of her business trip. He had been the trip. I stared blankly at the screen, trying to process it all. Was he a new coworker she never mentioned? A client? Or was he something far more personal? I didn't want to leap to conclusions, but all the pieces were coming together in a way that made my gut turn. Just then, the bathroom door creaked open. I quickly locked my phone and shoved it into my pocket. Natalie walked back in, hair damp, her face freshly washed and free of makeup. She looked at me with an odd mix of wariness and guilt, like she could sense that I was catching on. "You okay?" she asked, her tone a little too breezy. "You look pale." I forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired." She nodded slowly, though her eyes lingered on me, searching for something. Then she climbed into bed, pulled the blanket to her chin, and shut her eyes like everything was normal. I lay down next to her, staring at the ceiling, my mind churning nonstop. Sleep never came. I couldn't close my eyes without seeing that card, the lingerie, and the name, Marcus Hale. I knew I had to keep digging, but I couldn't let on that I knew. Not yet. As the morning light crept through the curtains, I made up my mind. I was going to uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I picked up my phone and began putting together a plan. If she thought she could hide this from me, she was in for a rude awakening. The next morning, I decided to play it cool. I couldn't risk tipping her off. Not until I had all the pieces of the puzzle. Natalie woke up as if nothing had happened, humming a tune as she made coffee in the kitchen. Watching her, you'd think she didn't have a single worry in the world. But I couldn't erase the panic I'd seen on her face the night before. It stayed with me all through breakfast. Trying to ease into it, I asked casually while sipping my coffee, "So, any exciting stories from the trip?" She paused for just a heartbeat before flashing her usual bright smile. "Not really," she shrugged. "Mostly just work stuff, meetings, presentations. The usual. Nothing fun." I nodded, pretending to accept the answer. "Must have been exhausting." "It was," she said, glancing quickly at her phone. "But it paid off. The client loved our pitch. We might close the deal next week." Her reply was smooth. Too smooth. I knew she was lying, but I didn't push her. I focused on what mattered, my plan. I needed more evidence. And for that, I needed access to her phone. After breakfast, she went to shower, leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. My heart pounded as I picked it up. She'd always been careless with her passcode. It was still our wedding date, which now felt more like a punchline than a memory. I unlocked it and scrolled straight to her messages, my hands shaking. There it was, a full conversation thread between her and Marcus Hale. My stomach twisted with every line. Natalie, I can't stop thinking about this weekend. It was perfect. You were perfect. I miss you already. Me too, she had replied. I hate sneaking around, but it's worth it. Felt like the air had been sucked from my lungs. There was no mistaking what had happened during her so-called work trip. The texts were explicit, raw, and painful. I scrolled further and found photos. Selfies of her in a hotel room, wearing that same black lingerie. I couldn't look anymore. I locked the phone and set it back exactly where she left it. When she came out of the shower, I acted like nothing had changed. I'm heading out for a bit, I said, grabbing my keys. Need to run a few errands. Okay, she replied, not even looking up from her screen. See you later. As I drove, I felt a whirlwind of rage, betrayal, and steely focus. I wasn't the kind of guy who exploded, but I was the kind of guy who planned. I pulled over in a quiet parking lot and made a call I never thought I'd have to make. Private investigator. His name was Jack. He listened carefully as I explained what I'd discovered. I'll take the case, he said. I'll need her schedule. Anything you have on this guy, emails, call logs, social media. I gave him everything, including the screenshots from that morning. Jack promised to start immediately and keep me updated. When I hung up, I felt the first flicker of control returning. Over the next few days, I acted like the perfect husband, smiling, laughing, even kissing her goodnight, while every second I held the weight of what I knew. It was agonizing, but I reminded myself that patience would deliver truth. Then one night Jack called. We've got something, he said. You'll want to see this. The call left me rattled. He wouldn't share details, just insisted we meet in person that evening. Back at home, Natalie sat on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling away like nothing had happened. Each glance at her felt like another stab. Her ease, her fake warmth, her performance. But I kept my mask on. The next morning, I told her I had a last-minute work meeting and drove to a diner on the edge of town. Jack was already waiting, a manila folder in front of him. My heart was pounding as I slid into the booth. You're not going to like this, he said gravely, sliding the folder toward me. But you need to see it. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside were grainy but clear photos. Natalie laughing, leaning in close to a man I instantly recognized. Marcus Hale. They were sitting together at what looked like a hotel bar, their closeness unmistakable. One photo showed his hand resting on her thigh. Another, them holding hands walking into an elevator. My stomach turned, but it got worse. Jack pointed to a small USB drive inside the folder. There's more, he said. Surveillance footage. Confirms everything. I couldn't bring myself to watch it there. Not in public. The photos were already too much. How long has this been going on? I asked, barely above a whisper. Jack's face was tight. From what I've gathered, at least a few months. Every time she travels, she's seeing him. Months. My entire world reeled. She had been lying to me for months, laughing in my face while building something with another man. Still, I kept my composure. What else did you find? I asked. He hesitated before pulling out another document. A booking confirmation. They've got another trip scheduled. 2 weeks from now. A resort in Miami. I clenched my fists as I stared at the page. She wasn't even trying to stop. She was planning more. It infuriated me, but I held back. If I was going to confront her, it had to be calculated and undeniable. Thank you, Jack, I said calmly. You've done more than enough. He nodded. If you need anything else, don't hesitate. And I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I left the diner with the folder and USB drive under my arm. Felt like I was carrying bricks. But the clarity was empowering. This wasn't a theory anymore. This was truth. Undeniable, documented truth. And now it was my move. That night, I sat in a dark, empty parking lot with the USB drive in my hand. I knew I had to see it, but I was terrified. Still, I couldn't resist. I plugged it into my laptop and opened the files. The videos were time-stamped. The first showed Natalie and Marcus embracing in the hotel lobby, then laughing at the bar like newlyweds, and finally the elevator, just seconds of them kissing before the doors closed. I skipped to the last clip, them entering a hotel room. The time was late. They didn't exit until morning. I closed the laptop, leaning back like I'd taken a punch to the ribs. It was crushing, but it gave me leverage. She had no idea. I had everything. I wouldn't just confront her. I'd break through her lies in a way she couldn't deflect. She betrayed me. "I thought you mentioned something about Miami a few weeks ago?" Her reaction was priceless. Her hand tightened around her mug, and she looked like a deer in headlights. "Oh, that's not confirmed yet," she stammered. "I'll let you know if it happens." "Cool," I said, forcing a smile. "Let me know. Maybe I'll come with you this time." Her nervous laugh told me everything I needed to know. In the following days, I wore my best poker face, keeping up the illusion of normalcy while silently laying the groundwork for the confrontation. I made multiple backups of every piece of evidence, the photos, the texts, the videos, and stored them across devices. I even printed out the most incriminating screenshots just in case. This wasn't going to be a shouting match. I wanted calm, irrefutable proof. Proof that left no room for lies. Then the perfect opening presented itself. One evening, as she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, I casually brought up an old memory. "Hey, remember how we used to binge those true crime shows?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She looked up, smiling. "Yeah, those were fun." "Why?" "I was thinking we should start one again. You know, see how people uncover hidden truths, expose secrets." I let that last sentence hang in the air, watching closely. Her smile flickered, and I noticed a subtle shift in her posture. "Sure, maybe sometime," she replied, her tone suddenly tight. That was it. The final confirmation. I'd sown enough unease. Now it was time to knock down the walls. The next evening, I set the stage. I invited her to sit with me in the living room, telling her we needed to talk. She looked intrigued, but not worried. She had no idea what was coming. As she sat down, I placed a manila folder on the coffee table between us. Her gaze locked onto it, and I caught the faintest spark of fear in her eyes. "What's that?" she asked, her voice already trembling. "Something I need you to see," I said evenly. "But first I have to ask, is there anything you want to tell me, Natalie? Anything at all?" She froze. The color drained from her face. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean," I replied, my voice controlled and clear. "I'm giving you one chance to tell the truth. If you've been hiding something, now's the time to be honest." Her lips parted slightly, but nothing came out. She looked like she wanted to invent a lie, but her brain couldn't keep up. When she stayed silent, I opened the folder and slid the photos across the table. "These are from your business trip," I said, my voice sharp now. "Do you recognize them?" Her eyes widened, her hands shaking. "I can explain," she stammered. "Oh, I'm sure you can," I cut in coldly. "But maybe you should watch this first." I opened my laptop and played the hotel elevator footage. Every trace of color vanished from her face. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered. "It's exactly what it looks like," I snapped. "You lied to me, you betrayed me, and you thought you'd never get caught." She opened her mouth to speak, but I kept going. "I know about Marcus. I know about Miami. I know everything, Natalie. So tell me, how long were you planning to keep this up? Were you just waiting for me to figure it out?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't about sympathy. It was about the truth, the raw, painful truth she had buried. Natalie sat frozen, staring at the damning evidence in front of her. Her tears began to fall, but they meant nothing to me. I didn't need her performance. I needed answers. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. It just happened. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. It just happened? That's the best you've got, Natalie. Affairs don't just happen. You made choices. You lied. You planned getaways. You snuck around. Don't insult me by pretending this was some kind of accident. She looked down at her trembling hands, twisting her fingers together like that could erase what she'd done. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she mumbled. Go this far, I repeated, my voice rising. You've been sneaking off with this guy for months. You've already booked your next trip to Miami with him. How far were you planning to take this? Were you just going to disappear and leave me behind like I was nothing? She shook her head desperately, her voice rising in panic. No, I swear, I wasn't going to leave you. You just what? I interrupted, slamming my hand down on the table. Wanted a little excitement? Something different? Was I not enough for you? Her silence hit harder than any confession. She couldn't even look at me, and that told me more than words ever could. For a long, tense moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything hung between us like a storm cloud. Finally, she whispered, I never stopped loving you. I let out a bitter, hollow laugh. You don't do this to someone you love, Natalie. You don't lie to their face, shatter their trust, and sneak off to hotel rooms with someone else if you love them. So spare me the script. I'm not buying it. Her sobs came harder now, and she buried her face in her hands. I don't know why I did it, she cried. I was stupid, selfish. I wasn't thinking. That much is obvious, I said coldly. But now you have to think, Natalie, because this doesn't end with you crying and me pretending to forgive you. There are consequences for what you've done. She looked up, wide-eyed, panic flickering through her tear-soaked expression. What do you mean? I mean this. I pulled out the printed screenshots and dropped them on the table like a verdict. This is going to our lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Her mouth fell open. She looked like she couldn't believe the words had come out of my mouth. Wait, no, she gasped, reaching for my hand. We can fix this. Please, just give me a chance to make it right. I pulled my hand back, shaking my head. You don't get to make this right, Natalie. Not after months of betrayal and lies. You torched whatever we had. And without trust, there's nothing left. Her sobs intensified, but I stayed rooted in place, unmoved. She needed to feel this. This was her storm. She created it. Now she could live in it. I stood up, gathering the folder and my laptop. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, I said firmly. I need space to figure out my next move. You can stay here, but don't think for a second that things are going back to how they were. This is the beginning of the end, Natalie. As I turned toward the door, her voice cracked behind me. Please, don't do this. I'll do anything. Anything. Just don't leave. I paused at the threshold, glancing back one last time. She looked shattered, desperate, but I felt nothing. You already left, I said quietly. The moment you chose him over me. And with that, I walked out, closing the door behind me. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, just trying to make sense of everything. Anger, betrayal, grief. The emotions came in waves, and none of them brought relief. I never thought this was how my life would unravel. Blindsided by the woman I trusted most. Natalie's begging still rang in my ears. But it didn't move me. It only deepened the anger. She didn't regret hurting me. She regretted getting caught. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a shabby roadside motel. It was quiet, dim, and cheap. Exactly what I needed. Somewhere far from her. Somewhere to breathe. I checked in and dropped my things onto the bed. Then I opened the folder again, flipping through the pictures, messages, and cold, hard proof. Each page drove the reality deeper into my chest. There was no turning back. Natalie had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. His name was Alan. He came highly recommended by a coworker. I told him everything. About Natalie, about the affair, the footage, the texts. He listened without interrupting, without judging. With the kind of proof you've got, Alan said, this could go smoothly, but it depends what you want out of it. Are you looking for a clean break? Or something more? I paused. Part of me wanted revenge. Wanted Natalie to feel even a fraction of what she'd put me through. But another part just wanted peace. I want a clean break, I finally said. But I'm not letting her walk away untouched. She needs to own what she's done. Alan nodded. Fair enough. We'll start drafting the paperwork today. Do you have a place to stay? Yeah, I replied, though calling the motel a place to stay felt like a stretch. I'll manage. After hanging up, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in days, I had a plan. I wasn't just wallowing in my misery anymore. I was doing something. Later that day, I got a call from Jack. There's something you should know, he said, his voice unusually serious. Marcus's wife found out about the affair. I blinked, caught completely off guard. He's married. Yep, Jack replied, and his wife is not taking it well. She's threatening to go public if Natalie doesn't back off. A bitter laugh slipped out of me. The irony was unbelievable. Natalie wasn't just tearing apart our marriage. She was wrecking someone else's too. Let her go public, I said dryly. Maybe Natalie needs to know what it feels like when her world crashes around her. The next few days were chaotic, though not in the way I had expected. Alan moved quickly on the divorce, and I made sure everything was lined up. Natalie, on the other hand, became a shell of the person I once knew. Gone was the bright, confident woman. What remained was someone quiet, desperate, and defeated. She tried apologizing again, but I stood firm. I can't do this anymore, Natalie. I told her during what would be one of our final conversations. I deserve better. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. I'm done being your safety net. Her tears meant nothing anymore. I had shed too many of my own, mourning a relationship that had clearly been one-sided. Now I was ready to release it. The divorce process turned out smoother than I expected. With the undeniable proof I had, Natalie didn't contest anything. We divided the assets fairly, and I kept the house. As for Marcus's wife, she did go public, and the backlash was swift and ruthless. Both Natalie and Marcus faced the full fallout of their decisions. But I didn't care. It wasn't my mess anymore. What caught me off guard most was how freeing it felt. Letting go of the rage, the pain. It was like shedding dead weight I'd carried for too long. I realized that the relationship I thought I had with Natalie had never been as strong as I believed. Losing her wasn't the end of the world. It was the start of something new. I poured myself into rebuilding, reconnecting with friends I'd distanced myself from, returning to hobbies I'd forgotten, and finally focusing on me. It wasn't easy. Some nights, the pain returned like a shadow. But those moments grew fewer, and eventually they stopped controlling me. A few months later, I found myself sitting in a quiet coffee shop, reading a book, just enjoying the peace. That's when I met someone, Rachel. She sat at the table next to mine, fumbling with her coffee and laptop. Need a hand? I asked with a small grin. She laughed, her smile easy and warm. Thanks. I swear, I'm usually more coordinated than this. We started chatting, and before I knew it, hours had passed. Rachel was quick-witted, open-hearted, and easy to talk to. For the first time in what felt like years, I felt a flicker of hope. We exchanged numbers and said goodbye, but that night, something in me had shifted. I wasn't broken anymore. Natalie's betrayal had wounded me, but it hadn't ended me. I was stronger now, wiser, and more certain of what I needed in life. Moving on didn't mean erasing the past. It meant refusing to be defined by it. And as I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt lighter, freer, and ready to welcome whatever came next. Sometimes life throws curveballs that force you to reevaluate everything. But in the end, those moments can lead to something better, if you let them. My story didn't end with betrayal. It ended with a fresh start. And for that, I'm grateful.